Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to another episode of the Seymour Reese Ball podcast. I'm your boy, Seymour Reese Ball, and today we have a phenomenal woman that is going to come and spend and take time with us. She is changing lives and impacting relationships for the 45 and older crowd because you know that we need it. And she is out here doing big things and speaking life and changing lives and doing things that are amazing. And we get a chance to hang out with her. But before we do that, guess what? You're going to see a link right here. Click the link and kick my intro, and let's go. Well. I am introducing to some and presenting to others this amazing woman right here, Miss Sydney Kelliee. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. Over 45 tribe.
Over 45 tribe
I
in the
need y'all to
building.
get in this room. This is the C. Maurice Ball podcast, and I am so super excited to be rocking with you today.
Oh my God. You're gonna make me that touch my heart. Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. So, Miss Sydney, how's your day? How's everything going?
It's good out here in California. It's just now getting dark outside, so it's been a great day. It's been a great day. I've been
Awesome.
excited to be here all day.
Well, you know what? I am so glad that you're here. So let me tell the people how we met.
Okay.
So, we were invited to an event and
Mhm.
she was the amazing host of this event that we were at, and I was a panelist on this stage of this event, and we just made a connection and we talked pretty
Man.
much all weekend, and we laughed, we joked, we kicked it, we danced. We Now, side note, oh, she can bust a move for real. She got the twinkle. She got some happy feet, and
Right, right,
and
right.
and so we just sat there and we just talked and we connected. And I was like, "Hey, I think you should pull up on my podcast." And she was like,
Man,
"Hey, you know what? I think I'm gonna do that." And
I
here
am.
we are,
And here we are. God is good
out all the time.
all the time.
So Miss Sydney, you are currently in California. Were
Yeah,
you born and raised in California?
absolutely not. That's where the story begins. No, I'm
It's
just kidding. So no, I wasn't born and raised in California. I'm originally from Chicago. Funny thing is, when I was born, I had asthma. And so my mother, they told my mother I wouldn't live through another winter. I was really suffering. And she was like, what if I moved to a warm climate like Arizona, like California? They were like, you could try. So we literally moved here when I was a little girl, and we moved back to Chicago. Right. I think I was like 4 because my mother experienced the first earthquake here. And my grandfather was like, you need to get back here with that baby. So we moved back to Chicago. And I never thought about California until this many years later. I was forced here by my company, and I was given 48 hours to make a decision. And that's how I ended up in California.
well, like when you hear stories when you're too young to kind of really recognize movement, and
Mm.
you go out to a place and then you come back, and your mom's was probably like, "Hey, it's earthquakes out there. I'd rather deal with that snow than
Right.
deal with those than deal with those earthquakes." Are you still asthmatic now? Do you
I
still have
am
any
not.
symptoms?
No longer have asthma.
Okay, so going there could have possibly a
Dried it
climate
up.
change could have
Mhm.
possibly did something, and we know that God is a healer, so
That's right.
that God healed you. Okay, so
Yeah.
you
It's
grew
that
up
fun.
in Chicago.
I did.
You grew up. Where at in Chicago? East
So
side, south side,
I'm a
north
South
side?
Side girl. I'm a South Side girl. But I grew up in Hyde Park in the South Side of Chicago. For those who are watching from Chicago, they'll know exactly where I mean. That's actually where Obama lived, in Hyde Park. So as a younger child, I lived there, and then we moved to the south suburbs in middle school. So I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago.
Oh, that's cool. South.
Yeah.
I used to go to the south side of Chicago and skate
Yes.
and eat rib tips over there
Oh
at a
my God.
barbecue joint.
Don't you
Eh,
talk about our food
Hey,
is the best food in the world.
I'm talking about finger licking good rib
Yeah.
tips. So did you as you were growing up, are you an only child? Are you a middle child? Are you
I'm an only child and I am spoiled rotten. Like
Oh,
spoiled
I get it.
rotten, but I'm probably the most unselfish, spoiled rotten person that you've ever met in your life.
Really?
I am so unselfish because I always want everything. Ever since I was younger, it's always been we should do this, we can do this. I've always been like a cheerleader, literally my whole life. Like I believe that we can all do it. It's never about me not wanting to be by myself, but not having sisters. I grew up with a bunch of only children. My mom and all her girlfriends, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, they all had daughters. And so we all grew up kind of together. They raised us together. So it felt like I always had sisters, but I've always made friends. And so I always have friends.
Okay. So you got the baby the only child syndrome.
I have
Your
the
way or
only
no
son.
way kind of thing popping off, right?
Wait, say that again.
No, your way or no way.
So believe it or not, I don't think I'm like,
Okay. So I'm the youngest of three and I'm the only boy. But then when I went to move with my dad, I was the only child. So yeah, it comes
it
with a
does.
certain level of entitlement,
It
you
does.
know.
I
It
think so.
it there's just some things that I'm just gonna do my way just because.
Yeah. 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 And that's difficult when you trying to have a partner.
Oh, I know that.
Especially young. That's what happened to me in my first marriage.
Okay. We gonna get to that. We gonna get to that first marriage. But how was middle school like? Were you the cool kid
Oh my
in middle
God.
school and through high school?
We were part of I guess now that you look back at it, you could say the in crowd or the popular girls. It was always me and my little friends. But I feel like I was bullied for my whole life. Like starting in second grade, I was chased by an eighth grader who wanted to cut my hair off. Like it was always that somebody wanted to beat me up. And so I felt like I was bullied my whole life. So my girlfriends and I always moved like in a clique. So yeah, I guess you could say technically, yeah, we were kind of the in crowd.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with
We were the
being
in crowd. And it's so hard because it's like, okay, not only was I an only child, my mom, she was a successful, black single mom, right? Even though my dad was in my life, my mom was still like the single mom who did everything, right? So I had everything. I mean, it's difficult to compare an only child to someone who has four or five sisters. I mean, I'm wearing leather pants to school, and
right,
and a fur jacket.
right, and while everybody else wear hand me downs, you
So
you
I can
take
understand now. Now I get it, but back then I didn't.
and we don't, like I didn't realize how well I was taken care of
Yeah.
until years later. And
Mhm.
but it does create a certain kind of something as you are moving and navigating through this. Your mom was a single mom,
Mhm.
and your dad was in your life. He was
Yeah.
an active dad,
Kinda. Papa
kind of.
was a
Okay.
Rolling Stone. So
Okay.
so my dad probably has about 100 children, but he only claimed two of us, myself and my brother. I have a stepbrother. So myself and my brother. And so we were always with my dad. I was like his little princess. Whenever I was with him, we were, close, but my mom kept me very active. I started dancing when I was 4, and I was like very active, like dance class 3 times a week, recitals, performances. And so my dad would be at all of that stuff, but he just never lived in the house with us. It's like my mom and dad were like brother and sister, like best friends, but he was my dad.
Mhm. So I term that as non-present but active.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now with him did with him being active, you learned how to engage with a man from your dad correctly, right?
Kind of. I'm
Kinda.
gonna say kind of, because remember he was a player. So
Okay.
so
Okay.
so kind of. I'm gonna say I saw him. I learned a man's tone from him, right? But it's not like he ever reprimanded me or told me, like, or he never reprimanded me. So I think that as I got older, which is something that I learned later, that I had to learn how to deal or accept with a man's tone, because sometimes a man's tone being direct, some people say it's direct. To me, it sounds like mean or
Mhm.
angry, because I was never really disciplined. I was an only child. What was I gonna do wrong? Like
Right. You was perfect.
I never got a spanking. Like,
I, what shoot. I
but
can't.
you're a boy though.
Yeah, I get it. Nope. Not one. Nah, I definitely was not that kid. Definitely. My grandmama used to make me go out and choose your weapon. You gotta go out to the tree
I've heard
and pick
stories
your
like that.
own switch.
I've
And
heard
don't come
so.
back with the little tiny one. You gotta come back with something that got some weight to it, like a whole
But you
tree branch.
probably did something bad. Be honest.
Oh yeah, I was always doing something bad.
See?
It was and, and barely getting caught, but when I got caught, it was a lot of trouble.
Oh
It was a
God.
lot of trouble. So,
Oh
so
God.
in your in your relationship with your dad, how was that going? Like, did you date in high school, and was your father not being there to kind of affirm you in some things? How did that play out in how you moved and navigated through through your dating relationships in high school and in college?
So this is what my dad told me. And I'm going to say this because there are probably lots of women watching. And this is one of the things that I know as Black women, especially, we kind of deal with. So you can see that I'm a brown girl, right? But I was a brown girl that had very long hair. So brown so what a lot of brown girls experienced with the bullying, like you're dark and all that kind of stuff, I never experienced that, probably because I had very long hair, right? So it's
Okay.
kind of difficult to be a lighter tone and say I'm ugly and dark when it was difficult, right? So I never got bullied in that way. But my dad, the one thing my dad told me was that I was special and that I was rare. And he said, then as I started to get a body, because I developed early. So like I was one of the first girls in 5th grade with boobs, and I never had a training bra. It was like from wake up in the morning, go straight to the D, right? It wasn't a total D, it was a C back then, but it was like I was the girl in school that had the big boobs. So I developed early, and I was thick, like very shapely. And so what my dad told me is that all men are going to always want me, that they're going to desire me, and for me to be the girl that they cannot get. And I lived by that through high school, through middle school, through the beginning of college. I wasn't a tease, but you just couldn't. Like I knew what you were coming with, because he told me all men are going to want me, is what he said. He was like, but be the one they cannot get. And that's what he taught me. He said
That's
I was special and unique.
that's great advice to really rock with. because it sets a foundation, but it can also set you up for failure too. Because
Yeah.
when you say all man, that's like everybody in the whole world, all the men
Right.
everywhere, which causes you to kind of navigate differently. So, what were some of your most trying times, like in high school and transitioning into changes into college? Because from most people that's following your story, they
Mhm.
see where you are right now. But
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that there was some times where when you were in high school and some things that forged you back then that are staples to your character and how you navigate now. What was a few of the challenges that you had to really overcome through that process of high school and into college?
So I know this is going to sound funny, but because I was an only child, my mother made her whole world about me. Like it really was all about me. It was all about my dancing and my performances and my preparation for whatever it was I was doing, right? So, moving into I knew what college I was going to. I only applied to one college. I wanted to go to Clark since I was in 7th grade. And I had a cousin my aunt became a professor at Clark, and my cousin was a little bit older than my male cousin was a little bit older. His sister, we were the same age and in the same grade. So we knew since 7th grade that we wanted to go to Clark. That was the only school I was applying to. So I was prepared for that. I really didn't have a whole lot of challenges. Oh, I almost didn't graduate from high school. I'll say that because I almost failed because I did not have enough credits in PE. And they didn't tell me until like 30 days before like it was time to graduate. And so what happened was I wouldn't dress, right? I wouldn't dress code because I'm like, I am not changing. I just got my hair done on Wednesday. I'm not changing. It's not enough time. I like it's too much. And so I would never go to PE. So, or I would get out of going to PE. So they said I didn't have enough credits. And so the last 30 days of school, I literally had to go to like 3 PEs in one day in order to
Yeah,
graduate.
yeah. You need PE. You
You PE
you you smart as a whip. You out here on National Honor Society and doing all that other stuff about to not graduate because
because
some
of
shorts and some
PE.
tennis shoes.
Right.
And you know what's funny? I work with young people, and a lot of the young ladies that I work with will take that F in gym,
Yes. It's a
and I'm like,
lot to ask a girl to change take off all of her clothes, run around, get sweaty, put your clothes back on. Because at that time, we didn't even they didn't do showers. There was no time to change and do a shower like they did on TV. There was no shower time. So that
yeah,
means you're putting your clothes back on sweaty and walking around for the rest of the day.
that's what we do. No,
Yeah,
th- that's
boys.
what boys do.
That's what
It's
boys
just like no, girls don't do that. That's what boys do. So you transitioned into Clark.
do.
How
No.
was? Oh, no, no, no.
I applied to go to Clark, and
Okay.
Clark they over enroll. And so what happened was my mom was like, you are not going away. You're not staying off campus your first year. And I was like, well, I don't know what we're going to do because I'm going away to school. So my mother made a few calls, and one of her friends was like, she can get into Russ College in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Lord have mercy. I had never been to Holly Springs, Mississippi in my life. And so we U-hauled down there. Literally, we pull over at this gas station. They're like chickens running around. And I'm like, where are we going? So I pull up in my U-Haul with all of my clothes to Russ College. It's this small little black college in Holly Springs, Mississippi. And when I say I had the most fun of my life to this day, I am still friends to some of the people that I met there. I'm the godmother to one of my girlfriends that I met there. Like, it was so much fun being in that little small town. All they had was a KFC when we moved there. That was the only fast food chain restaurant that was there.
Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Mississippi. Now, I've told God there's a couple of places that I will never live, and um, he has a sense of humor. And so the few places that I told him I would live, I've lived there.
See?
And Mississippi is not one of them. So I just learned how to say, God, I just really desire not to ever go to Mississippi. I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to live there, but I just don't have the desire to go to Mississippi at all.
Mississippi. But I'm telling you, Mississippi's coming up. A lot of people are moving back to Mississippi.
I mean, my perception of Mississippi, and this is going to be a very crazy stereotype,
I
and I don't
know.
want to offend nobody if you're from Mississippi, but when I see documentaries and things on Mississippi, it's like you forget that we've been free for a long time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no, I don't. I ain't walking around with my papers that say I'm free. It just say that I'm I'm being free, and that's just a total stereotype
It
that I have of people in Mississippi.
Well, it kind of is, but it's still real true. So even though I went to Russ College for that 1 year, I tried out for the Mississippi Dance Company. Well, the truth is I got kicked out of Russ College. That's the truth.
Ah,
I got kicked out of Russ College because it's a, what do you call it? It's not a Christian college, but it's a Christian college. It's a
okay,
Baptist college. And so they had like really strict rules. So one of the things that's true about the North and the South is the people from the South really hate the people from the North. They
for
like
sure.
they That was my first experience ever like really feeling like they felt like we were against them. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute, as they would say. My grandparents ran, yours didn't. Like it's not my fault because I want to be your friend, right?
Right.
So, so that was already a thing, and so I got in trouble because I had this big trunk full of clothes that I had left over the holiday weekend. Because when you would leave, you would have to, leave your stuff, and so I had some guys carrying the trunk to my room. They said that I had a boy in my room and they kicked me out of school.
Wow.
They kicked me out of school. And so I had to spend a whole semester out of school, which meant, see, let me tell you something about perseverance. Because a lot of people could be like, man, I got kicked out of school. What am I going to do next? So when you talk about me like just jumping over hurdles, like if it's not stopping, nothing is stopping the vision, right? So now I get kicked out of school and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I tried out for the Mississippi Dance Company. I got in, which meant that I had to go to Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss was, the
A
big
bigger college.
university in Mississippi.
Yeah,
But Ole Miss is like it's all YT at Ole Miss.
for
And you
sure.
are just a small little crumb there. And so the campus was huge. It was like I had to have a car. That's when I first got my car. I told my mom I needed a car. I bought the car online. I went to the dealership, picked out the car. They called her. They told her what it was going to be. She signed the papers and I drove back to campus in my Mitsubishi Eclipse.
So when you say like that's a whole nother level of spoiled. I was just saying like the internet wouldn't even really birth fully.
No,
What? And you
no.
get a car?
I
Like
needed
that's
it.
that's
That
some
Ole Miss campus was crazy.
that's some Hillary Banks from the Fresh Prince kind of stuff.
It does seem like that. It
Uh,
does. Now that I look back, but then it was just normal to me.
well, I mean, yes. And so to somebody on the outside like me, we would say, you just called and like yesterday you ain't had no car and today you got one. Oh, you rich. You
No,
rich.
well,
That's
again, only child.
oh well yeah, yeah.
You know what
But
I mean?
to get a car, like,
You need a car in college. Oh my God.
you you do need a car in
You
college.
need a car in college. Especially if
Because you
you don't
can't
want to have to depend on other people. Because if
you
you
don't want to
don't
have
buy
to
your
walk
daughter a
everywhere,
car in
right?
college, she's going to depend on boys. So if you don't want her to depend on boys in college, buy her a car.
That's great advice. Buy
Hmm.
her a car. And I can't say anything like my son has He has a whip. We got him
See,
for his birthday
see,
um, last year, so I get it, but it's different. I wasn't raised like that. But to hear your story, like, hey, I just wanted a car, and my mom said, hey, daughter, I got you.
it's time for it. It's time for a car.
That's that's crazy. So how was Ole Miss? How was that transition from
Oh my
a
gosh, it
small
was so
HBCU
different. It
up
was so
into
different.
a one of the larger campuses in I know probably the largest campus in Mississippi,
Yeah.
probably besides Mississippi State. But
Hmm.
how was that? How was the transition from little tiny HBCU to Ole Miss?
It was very different. It's true what they say. You are like a small number, right? So going from having an auditorium class at Russ College where it was probably like 50 of us in there to going to Ole Miss where like my history class had 200 people in it and like
That's
I'm
crazy.
practically in a balcony like in my seat, right? So it was so different, so different. It can be intimidating. I totally can see how people can get lost at large colleges like that because that's where you were like, you have to message the professor, like these are the days that they have. At the black college, it was a little bit, it was like a level, 3 levels up from high school, but it wasn't auditorium. Like it wasn't, you couldn't get to the professor. It wasn't like if you really had questions, you had to seek out study halls. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
wasn't, it was different. And I can see where people could get totally lost, especially if you are afraid to like speak up for yourself. You could get lost in those big schools. It was very different. It was very different. But to give you a cute story about you saying that, the whole like us being free, when my mom was visiting me one weekend, she went to this bed and breakfast. While I was in one of my sessions, she went to a bed and breakfast. And so she said the lady came out and she was talking to her and they had such a great conversation. She said the house was beautiful. And so they were talking, but the lady was on the porch and mom was like on the walkway. And so then she was like, well, we've been doing all this talking. Let me come on in and get breakfast. She said, oh, no, we're not, I wouldn't be able to serve you here, but you would be a lot. Now, this was in 92.
Okay.
And she told her that she could, they didn't serve coloreds there, but it was nice talking to her. And that she told her where else she could go in the town to have breakfast. And my mother was like, oh, okay.
In 92?
In 92.
Mm, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
So you were what, a freshman in 92?
I was
Sophomore in
a
90?
sophomore in 92.
Okay,
Yep.
so this is a question. You could answer it. We'll redact it if you don't want the people to know. Was you in Freaknik any
I
of the night?
was. I was. And here's
What
the
what,
thing. I
what year?
started going to Freaknik in 7th grade. So I started going to my very first Freaknik was 7th grade, but we weren't allowed to go to the parties. My aunt wouldn't let us go to the parties. But 8th grade, we got to go to a party at Freaknik with my cousin. And so 8th grade, I graduated from 8th grade in 87. So my very first Freaknik was when they really were Freaknik, when it was the real deal.
So I was in Freaknik in 93.
Ooh,
And
it was still popping in 93.
oh yeah, yeah. Oh, it was off the chain in
It
93.
didn't really end until 95. It became not the same. But in
Yeah.
93, it was still the real freak.
So you been rocking for Freaknik since
Man,
1988, 87, 88. What?
man. Yes,
Uh, so you were already accustomed to. I mean, it's only so much you could do at that such young age, but it was already something that you were familiar with. So when your people said, "Hey, spring break, Freaknik,
yes,
we going
yes,
to the A, let's
yes.
go."
Let's go. Yep.
That's all right. Did you have fun?
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It made me that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go to college, like to experience all of that type of stuff, right? Um, I really didn't like high school. I thought high school was dumb. I was like, it's a waste of time. I want to focus on what I want to be focused on. Why do I need to know about this? Like, I was one of those. Like, I just can't wait to graduate. And I was going to be such this great student. I was a CD student in high school because literally my mom poured everything. It was about my extracurricular activities. And she
Hmm.
always, I'm going to say she poured more into my creative side than she did my educational side. And my mom and all the women in my family are very well educated. I mean, I've come from a family where college wasn't a do you want to go, it's you're going. Just where are you going? So it
Yeah.
wasn't even an option to not go. And even when I was in high school, I loved hair and makeup. I was born with lipstick on, and I've always been the beauty girly girl. And so I wanted to go to cosmetology school. And so in my senior year in high school, my mother put me in cosmetology school, and I would get out of school and I would go to cosmetology school from 5 to 9. And so I was going to graduate from high school and only have a little bit longer to go. But when I found out that you couldn't break it up, I was like, oh no, I'm going to college. This is just for on the side. So I dropped out of cosmetology school so I could go away to college, all to turn around and graduate from college and go to cosmetology school. And my mother almost had a conniption. She said, I spent all my money for you to go to college, and now you want to go to beauty school? Oh, it was the biggest argument ever.
I can imagine. You said something that I don't think a lot of people hear, and I think is really key because it's a two-sided coin, and it says the same thing on both sides of the coin. You said going to school, going to college wasn't an option for you.
Mhm.
Now, on the other side of that coin is going to college sometimes is not an option. So you have the you're going because it's not an option, right?
Mhm.
Like you're going to college, period. And then
Mhm.
on the other side of that coin is it's not an option because we don't have the resources. So
Oh, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So when I hear this, like, because I was kind of in the same boat, but I also talked to people who college was not an option.
Right. Right.
You and so it's the context in which it's used in your situation. It was you're going by any means necessary, and
Yeah,
then
you're like, it's no, you don't get to not go. That's as
right.
so when I say that I come from the original bourgeoisie family, black bourgeoisie family.
That the I think like some of those traits and things that we have back then were really great. Like my dad gave me three options on what to be or what I could do with my life when I
Mhm.
was growing up. Either I could be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer. Those
Mhm.
were the only three things that he gave me. Now, the challenge was he didn't have the people resources to put me in place so that I could be exposed to those three things.
Mhm.
So I didn't know, you know, yeah, I could have probably been a great doctor,
Mhm.
or I could have probably been a great engineer, or I could
Mhm.
have been a great lawyer, but because I did back when we were younger, you didn't talk to adults. You didn't hang
Right.
out with adults. They were
Right.
not your friends. Your parents'
Mhm.
friends were not your friends.
Friends, right.
So you could have heard anything. You could have My dad could have had all these people around him, but because we didn't talk to adults, it was like, hey, um, I don't know. I didn't
Right.
turn out to be neither one of those.
Right.
Just like that. Didn't turn out to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Yes. So as you're traveling through college, did you get involved in any relationships in college? Did
I
is
did.
that Go ahead? I'm sorry.
I said I did. I've always been in a relationship
Oh,
my whole
you've
life.
always been in a relationship?
Always.
Huh. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's a good thing, but I also don't think it's a bad thing if you take the time out to really kind of develop yourself throughout those relationships and in between, not just get lost in them, which is what most people do. So I'm only gonna say it's a good thing because I've never people always want to settle me down, right? It's always immediate. I want you to be my girlfriend. I really don't ever have that whole time to just kind of like be alone, but I enjoy being in a relationship. When I'm not in a relationship, I didn't find out till later on in life. When I'm not in a relationship, um, I'm okay with that too because I'm an only child. So really, I kind of like being by myself, and
Mhm.
so it's a kind of a struggle that I deal with anyway on a daily basis. Like I like being by myself, but I like being in a relationship. So it's a struggle.
Would you consider the always in a relationship having like the fear of being by yourself? I mean, I know from an only child, you're constantly by yourself. You
Hmm.
get accustomed to doing things alone. You get used to those things. But when it comes to relationships, the fear of loneliness. Now, did that cause you to make some bad choices when it came down to getting into relationships?
So I've
Before you
ne-
learned how to navigate and manage it?
so I've never felt the fear of lone. I've never felt that before. So my struggle is that I like being alone, so that when I'm in a relationship, I have to fight to kind of be willing to not it like you said in the beginning, it be about me, like me wanting my space, me almost I always ask this question to women that I'm working with. You can get selfish in your singleness, right? And so I could easily just be like, oh, I'm not in a relationship and retreat to being with me. But it seems like it goes from one to another. Like there's space in between, but it's not like a lot of space. It's not like I've ever been single. The longest I was ever single was from 2017 until probably 2022. That was the longest I've ever been single. Be- So I went from one relationship and then it might have been a year or two and then another, like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit. I think sometimes sharing space is very difficult. It is. You like what you like. You like your. I want to just go in and sit and be reclusive, but
Hmm.
then you have that social side that says, "Hey, I." It's almost like me just using you to meet a need, almost, right? Like I
I guess
I
you
want
could.
to be in my own space, but I
Hmm.
like you for in my space for a short period of time. And then when I no longer want you to be in my space, I don't want you in my space. Just get,
Which is why at this big age, you should have separate bedrooms because it's more fun like that.
okay. You don't talk. Oh, we going all the way back to the Brady Bunch
That's
and the
right. And
Flintstones.
the Flintstones. And that's why they were happy.
You know, if I break that down, that's probably why they were happy. They slept in separate beds.
Man,
Oh, wow.
man.
That's
And most of the time, people think that I'm being funny, but no, seriously, most of the time, it's not about wanting to be apart. It's about allowing each other to have your space. So if you're really in love and in a happy relationship, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be that you end up staying in my room or I end up staying in yours. But then there's times when it's like, babe, go to your own room.
you definitely need some space. And I think the question was proposed on the in the conference that we were at, that about space and being important. Oh, no, 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 it wasn't. I was on a Zoom call and they asked the question like, how important is being able to give each other that time, that space. And I think that uh, if we're constantly smothering each other and we have no time to grow or recognize the things that we need to grow in, because our time overlaps, and so I
Mhm.
don't really have the time to analyze myself, and you don't have the
Ever.
time to analyze yourself. And then when something comes up, it's like, how did I get here? Well, I never had no time by myself to be
Never.
able to uh, be be by myself to clear my own thoughts and
That's
grow and
right.
develop.
Right. And you can
Okay.
keep it spicy. I can text you and be like, babe, come to my room.
Woo-wee. Hold on, let me check my phone real quick. Okay, just
See?
make sure ain't
See?
no make sure make sure my wife ain't sending me no texts right now.
Right, right.
Uh, so in that, how what was the age you were, or when was your first real relationship, or when you transitioned like, hey, I think this could be marriage, and what did that look like, and how did that play out for you?
So my high school boyfriend, my junior year, our parents were really good friends. Our moms were good friends. And so it was like his family was like, we're going to get married, right? And so it was almost like that was automatically going to happen. But I still was kind of this girl who met a lot of guys, and I still hung out with my girlfriends, and I still knew I was going away to college and didn't necessarily, my plan was that I was going to date, and then come back and get married again. I was spoiled and oblivious, right? Shut up, Mari.
Sounds like a great plan.
We're gonna
And he
date
just gonna sit
and then
there and
we're
be
gonna come
he's
back
gonna be
together.
sitting there waiting, wrapped in a package with a bow on itself.
I just thought, that we would come back together. I just thought that that was what we were gonna do. I didn't realize back then the whole a person can get attached to somebody else and then it just doesn't. It's a whole thing. I just knew that he was coming back, but that was well, I take that back. That was my junior. He was a senior when I was a junior, so of course he graduated earlier. So he went away. I started dating someone else my senior year, and he was super cool too. Now I think he thought that we were gonna go away and come back. He thought that, but I knew that he that he wasn't gonna be the final husband. This was my senior year in high school, right? So then I go away to college and I get my first fraternity boyfriend there, and we dated until I transferred from Ole Miss and finally went to Clark. And we stayed together until I went to Clark. And then from Clark, I started dating and got engaged my junior year in college.
I'm sorry, you got engaged in college,
I did.
so early 20s
I got my first big ring.
in college in your early 20s.
Yeah.
How was that? I, because for me in my 20s, I couldn't even spell marriage. So
You know
like,
what? You are so funny.
like marriage, what? One woman? Nah, that ain't working. Uh, so how was that? How was that like, that's a whole different mindset shift when somebody asks you to marry them. What kind of shifts did you make in that, and in that shift, how because you used to having having friends and being flirty and flirtatious and things like that, and how did that how difficult was that for you to say, okay, I'm in an exclusive relationship right now?
So, like I said, I kind of was always in the exclusive part of the relationship, but the marriage part just meant that we were going to be together forever. The hardest part about it was not just the transition of, okay, we're going to be married, but it was that he played football for Georgia Tech. So he was very popular, and so early on, I've always been this girl who had this confidence that nobody could take my boyfriend, right? I always was that. And so I never, that was my first time experiencing what it's like to be with somebody who a lot of women get a lot of attention, and me having to like deal with that. So I think that was the hardest part, but he did a very good job of me never feeling like I was in competition with anybody. He did a very good job of that.
Okay, so he's a star athlete. You're seeing all these. Did that create any kind of insecurity, or was you just really that solid? Like, I'm really solid in our relationship, and I'm okay.
I don't think that it was that I was so solid in our relationship. I think that I just thought I had it going on. So it was like, psh, I could get any move on if you act up.
I mean, I love the mentality. That's you know, as it just it kind of is what it is. You
I,
know.
yeah, I kind of was like that. It was kind of like, you know, if you, there's other people that would be happy to have this spot. So I just was maybe I was a little cocky.
Did y'all end up getting married?
No,
Okay. So
we didn't get
what
married.
was the downfall of that?
When we graduated from college, he got drafted. And we, the whole time, it was like we would talk about each other's dreams. Like, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do. It was like a what we're going to do. I'm in school too. So I'm in school for a reason because I have this whole thing that I want to do. And when he got drafted, it was like, you need to get here and be the wife, right? And I'm like, because I told you after I graduated from college, I went straight to cosmetology school. And so he was like, "You're playing around in cosmetology school. Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "If you're not listening to any of the what I've been saying, what I wanted to do," because once he got drafted, it became about him. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to be an NFL wife. Like, it was a lot. And so the thing that I didn't tell you also about me being spoiled, or what some people would see as spoiled, is I didn't know how to cook or wash when I went away to college. I didn't know how to cook or wash clothes when I went away to college. I did not learn how to cook because my mother didn't learn how to cook because my grandfather had help for my grandmother. So there was a lady who cooked for my mom and the kids. There are five of them. My mom has four other brothers and sisters. And so there was a lady who cooked for them, who cleaned for them. And so she didn't learn how to cook. She didn't teach me how to cook. So she
Mm.
had somebody who cooked for us because it was just me and her until I was in sixth grade. So I still never learned how to cook. And so one of the things that I always tell women, because I know that the saying is the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Oh, you can get a ring without knowing how to cook. That's all I'm going to say.
Uh, Well, 100% agree with that.
You can get several rings
Uh,
without knowing how to cook.
I 100% agree with that. Yes. That 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 is a very true statement all by itself.
All by itself. All by
So what you're
itself.
saying is that he was trying to cloud, like the dreaming stopped and the dreaming became a monolith dream. It was like, hey, it was ours. Now it's no, it's you're just gonna come and be a part of my dream, and then your dream stopped. Did you break it off? And did you
I
break it
did.
off?
I
And you
did.
broke it off because it was you
So
felt
you're
that
not
you was
gonna
going to
tell me
lose
what to
yourself.
do? Absolutely. Again, remember I was cocky. I'm like, oh, just on to the next. I'm like, you are not gonna tell me, like, how are you gonna tell me what to do? Like, no, we're not doing that. But I still didn't know that it was like gonna be over, even though like you hear this is a repetitive thing, like I'm gonna come back.
Yeah. So
Now
look,
that I'm hearing it, it's like, oh my gosh, I was so delusional.
that's what I was just about to say. I was like, that's kind of delusional, but if you don't have nobody telling you that that is delusional, it can be reality.
Yeah.
It can have the appearance of being reality. So what happened after that? Did you end up getting? Did you y'all was together for what? How long were y'all together?
We were together for like 3.5 years because we got together junior year, and then we broke up the year a year after we graduated, 2 years after we graduated. So it was
Okay.
my senior year, and then he went to the NFL, and then we broke up after that.
Okay. Now, did you get into another relationship after that?
I did. So when I was dating him, there was a lot of space because he was like serious. And I mean, you really have to have a focused mind to get to the NFL or to get, into the higher level, the professional, when you go into the professional level of sports, you really do. I don't think people give these young guys enough credit where their minds have to be in order to focus to get to these levels, right? So I respected that. And we gave each other a lot of space. I trusted him, he trusted me. I would drive his car, he would drive my car. Now, at Clark, down in Atlanta, it's like a big circle. We call it the AUC, Atlanta University Center, which is all the schools, right? So it's the Clark, Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown at the time. So all the schools are like in a big square. And then outside of that square is other schools, Georgia Tech, Georgia State. So it's like just a bunch of college kids, right? Everywhere. And so I would drive his car, he would drive my car. My car said Hot Cocoa because that was my nickname in college. So he would drive my car, right? People knew he was Hot Cocoa's guy. And his car had the Georgia Tech plates and it was a convertible sports car. So everybody knew like we drove each other's cars. So we trusted each other, like put it like that. So I met somebody who he was from Chicago. He was a friend of one of my Chicago friends, and we all used to hang out together. And he just became like a really, really good friend. He was like that person that I could call when Sid was tripping, right? Like, oh, you want to just sit up and watch tapes all night? Like, I don't want to watch tapes. I want to go out. Like, it's Friday night. We're in Atlanta.
He got you in there to study a field.
Right.
Very boring. Very, very boring.
When you are 22 with a hot body in college, right? So driving a Hot Cocoa white Eclipse.
Yeah. And I'm up in here doing field study, talking about the linebacker didn't shuffle his feet.
Exactly. So he became like a really good friend. He would be like, let's go bowling. And so we would all just hang together as friends, like in a friend group. But I could tell like he really, really liked me. So we kind of started talking. I guess we talked. We talked while I was still in a relationship. So at the point in which I decided I'm not going to be in a relationship anymore, I was like, I have a decision to make between two men. The one who I think is going to be the best husband and father. I could choose NFL, right? But what the life that I saw was just being like this. First of all, I'm not a housewife. I can't even cook and clean, but I knew he didn't expect that of me. But I wasn't looking at it like that. My vision, the vision that God gave me when I was a little girl, has always been what drove me, right? So anything that came against or was going to be like a blockage to that vision didn't get to stay. Like I would mow it down before I would let it block the vision. And I had a vision. I wanted to own salons all over the world. I wanted to do that. Like long before there were hair cutteries and all of that stuff, I saw myself as being this big entrepreneur that was going to own salons all over the world. And so how was I going to get there if I was an NFL wife wearing fancy clothes and driving fancy cars? The other thing that I will say helped me a lot, because remember, we came up in the days when kind of the drug dealers were a big deal, right? The other thing about me being spoiled that I really believe protected me from getting caught up with boys and men is that back in the day, the way that guys would get women was by giving them things. They would buy them shoes or buy them stuff, give them money. He gave them $100. There was nothing that you could give me that my parents couldn't give me. So I remember my mother saying that you don't accept gifts from men. Don't accept gifts from boys. Anything you want, just tell me and I'll get it. So the whole trying to get me or lure me by giving me things never would work. So where some people looked at, the NFL, like my life to me was the bomb. Like, so I really didn't see NFL as as taking me out. Yes, that didn't have any value to me. Now,
hindsight is always 2020. Yeah. What? Let me look back at that. Yeah.
Because when I
Shoot.
have told this story over and over, women will be like, "What? You didn't do what? Like I should have had a baby. I should have like I didn't think like that at all." At
And you know what? And that's probably good because people think they want that lifestyle, and they don't really know what they're stepping into until they get it. I have a few friends that's in the league, and a few friends that coach in the league, and a few friends that's in the NBA. It, you don't want that lifestyle. Like, you have to be really, really, really secure yours in order to be able to get into that space. I think now there's a lot more leniency, and hey, you can go and be who you want to be. But back then it
back
was a
then,
you
it
had
was
a mold that you would have had to fit into to be the basket or the NFL
yes,
wife,
yes,
right?
yes.
You would have to fit in this mold, and that mold would have was forcing a square peg into a round cylinder, would have shaved off all the stuff that made you you.
Thank you. I'm like,
Yeah,
my mom, because what I didn't say is that I didn't get financial aid. My mom had to pay for me to go to school. So how am I gonna go through all of that to then turn around and just like be nothing? Like I did all of this for a reason. And so yeah, that life, and I did have girlfriends who stayed married. Well, they're not now, but who stayed married to their NBA, NFL husbands. And I saw the world. That wasn't the world that I dreamed about. But again, like you said, it was different then. Now I could become an NFL wife and be an NFL wife on the show. I could build my own brand because I'm his wife. Like it
for
wasn't
sure.
like that then. It wasn't. So I saw it differently. I was like, I got to go do me because me is the dream that God gave me is the one that I have to live out. So, yeah.
And looking at that, just because you make it to the league in you make it to professional sports, doesn't mean that you're capable of being the right
Mm,
husband or the right father
thank you.
or anything like that, because you're talking about in a time in the early 90s where mental health was not anything that people were talking about, and we're not going to sit up here and talk about our issues, so we would have to put this front on like everything was all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't get married to the NFL guy.
Right, right. I went the safe route. I went the safe route.
So did you end up marrying this new guy that you were?
I did. I ended up
Okay.
marrying him. Yep, the Morehouse man.
Now, how did that work? Now, here's my question. Y'all got married. Did he have examples?
So he had his mom and dad. They,
Okay.
yeah, his parents were married. They're actually still married to this day. My son is the fourth, and he will be flying out on Monday to go to be with his family in Chicago because his grandfather is really sick and the family is getting together. So, yep, he had examples. Well, you think that he had examples, right?
Right.
People think that just because you come from a two-parent household that you have examples, a good example, but you still only have the example that that two-parent household showed you. So if it was good, it was good, but if it was bad, it was bad, right?
Right.
So yes, he had a very large family, and our relationship, we were super close when we first came home from school. And then, I mean, when we first got together, we were very close. We thought we wanted to be married. I think we really did want to be married, and we got married. We had a ginormous wedding. Of course, I'm an only child. My mom is a socialite in Chicago. So we had 1,000 people at our wedding, and we had a sit down dinner for 500.
What? Well, I know that. The price tag on that wedding and food alone. Oh no, no, we not
I
doing that.
had 18 bridesmaids and 18
Eight,
groomsmen. It was a production.
you had 18 people standing behind you And he had 18 dudes.
Yep.
He had 18 friends.
Yeah.
That at that point,
Friends,
you just drafting
family.
cats. Hey man, you want to be at my wedding? You know, after the first 5 or 6.
You
Yeah,
stupid.
yeah, man. Dang, that's huge.
It was
And I'm pretty
huge.
sure that was a pretty expensive wedding.
It was.
Um, but because you didn't have examples, do you think, or I'm assuming because you said you had aunties and uncles, but did you have did you have examples of what a married couple look like and what a
I
married?
did. So
Okay.
a lot of my mom's friends were married. We're part of my mom's an AKA. We're Links. We are Jack and Jill. I don't know if you've heard of all those like
Yeah.
organizations, but yeah,
Yeah.
we my mom had really great friends that I grew up around that were there. Some were single, some were married, but the married couples to me always look like so happy. I'll give you a great example of a married couple that I grew up believing, knowing, or thinking, or looking up to, and that's the Jacksons. Jesse Jackson and his family are very good friends with my family. And so I grew up in his home, like seeing their marriage and, wanting to one day be like them. So I've always wanted to be married, even though my mom, well, I take that back. My mom was married. My mom got remarried. My mom married a YT man and but we didn't live in the same house. Probably the reason why I think it's awesome to not live in the same house. See how things can kind of distort your thinking?
Yeah.
So
Big time.
he lived in New York and we lived in Chicago. So I never actually lived in the house with my stepdad consistently.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how did this new marriage, this newly found, everything is pumping on all cylinders, and it sounds like it is a setup for a fairy tale ending.
Me and my
Is
first husband.
yes.
It was a fairy tale for a long time. We planned our son, pee on the stick, got to do it 4 days in a row, get pregnant. No, so we planned our son, and we even had plans to like wait until he was 6 months to then do it again. So it was like it was a plan, right? It was like
Uh-huh.
remember I said my vision. It was everything's coming together. So now I have this husband. Now we're building a home. So what we did was in Chicago. For those that aren't familiar with Chicago, Chicago has this area right before you get to downtown Chicago. It's called Bronzeville. And it was one of those areas that had gone down. It used to be really grand over the years, and then it went down and it was being regentrified. So all the big, beautiful brownstones people were rebuying and all of that. We purchased a brownstone and we did a complete gut rehab. So we tore it, completely gutted it out and rebuilt it. Now we're not even 30 yet, right? We have this fairy tale little life. We build our, home. When I bought him a Range Rover. We were living really fast and high for a young couple. But it seemed like that's what all of our friends were doing that. Like everybody was buying homes and, like that's what everybody was doing. But now that I look back at it, we were probably living really fast. And I'm going to say that our families were kind of like two different families, right? His family felt like my family was super bougie. Okay. So shut up, Mark.
Yeah, I get it.
Shut up, Maurice. His family felt like my family was like super bougie. So it was always like this friction, right? Even though I wanted to belong, I'm an only child. I wanted to be a part of a big family, right? But I always felt like they didn't really like me. And so I think that over the time, our relationship just I'm going to say this, I'm the big thinker. I'm the one who was like, let's get a brownstone, let's do this. Like I told you, I'm always one who's like, we can do this and we can do this. And like, that's me, right? And sometimes I think that we can do this. My mind and my vision is bigger than so many people that they're like, that would be nice, but they don't see it for real. I see it for real, right? And so I think that I had this big mind, bigger than his mind. And I think that he was probably just like, she just is. does whatever she wants to do. And at that time, I did do whatever I want to do. I know now that I was different, that if I knew then what I know now, we may have been able to make it. I'm going to
Uh-huh.
say that because I still had that attitude of, if this is not working, I'll just get a divorce, right? I had that attitude, one. And then the other attitude was, I want to do it together. But if you say no, I'm going to do it
Uh,
anyway.
and that's the spoiled only child mentality right there.
Yep.
With
Yep.
or without you, I'm
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 doing
gonna make this thing happen.
right.
I,
And that was my attitude.
I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It
I-
was
so how long were y'all married before y'all went y'all separate ways?
10 years. We were married for 10 years. And then when we separated, I was like, we should separate. We separated. We sold the brownstone. I moved into a condo closer to downtown Chicago, and he went and moved into another place. And I had my condo overlooking downtown Chicago, Lake Michigan, with my little Mercedes truck, and I opened a spa.
Okay.
Yeah. So we separated on a great note, like on a friendly note. We separated and we did not get a divorce right away because he's an engineer for the railroad. And so his insurance and everything is just great. And so since we were still on great terms, it was like, just stay on my insurance. You and the baby, just stay on my insurance. And if we ever decide that you decide that you want to date somebody seriously, or I decide that I want to date somebody seriously, we'll officially get a divorce out of respect for the other people and we'll move on. And that's exactly what we did.
Wow.
We even
That-
wrote our child support order into the divorce decree. And it was like that until he was 18 years old.
wow.
Hmm.
That's I mean that's a high character dude right there.
Hmm.
Um, to have the consideration that's a real solid
It
that's a
was.
real solid dude. Um, then after that, what was next? After you, so how long were you divorced before the next move into another relationship?
Oh, that's good. So I was probably, how long? You said, how long was I divorced?
Yeah.
So we separated in 2004 and we stayed married until 2009. So I that was probably the longest window. That was when I first found out about dating apps. It was like 2005 when I first found out about dating apps and I started trying to go out there and like date. And so it was up and down, up and down. Because what I didn't talk about was my career in the beauty industry. After I graduated from cosmetology school, I went on to get myself really fully immerse myself into the beauty industry. And so I worked for L'Oreal USA and Soft Sheen Carson Division. I was the product development director for them for 3 years. I worked for Alberto Culver and I was the head test stylist there, where I worked along with the chemist to make sure that the formulations were perfect for then the salon. Then I decided to go into cosmetics because I liked cosmetics better. And so I worked for MAC Cosmetics as a trainer for them. I worked for Hair Cuttery. Like I've worked for a lot of companies in the beauty industry. But when L'Oreal left Chicago, because the Soft Sheen Carson division was in Chicago, they asked some of us to move to New York. They wanted to bring everybody to New York. At the time, we were still married and living in the same house. We decided that we didn't want to move to New York. We looked at what it would cost for us to move to New York. At the time, our son was 5. It was going to be $50,000 for kindergarten. He would have had to try to get with the New York Transit. He was already in, with Chicago. Like it just, for men, sometimes you have to look at that. And I knew that if we had moved to New York and that he hadn't found his like way, that could have been a problem. And a lot of people were like, oh, you need to make sure that he's comfortable because sometimes that could be a problem. So we decided we weren't going to do the New York thing. And then after that is when we broke up. So my company, I opted to take the package instead of moving to New York, and I opened up a spa instead. And so that's when I was like trying to date. I had my little condo, I had my Mercedes, and my little cute son. And I was living the single life. And so I did that until about 2007 is when I actually officially got into another relationship. So from 2004 to 2007, I got into the relationship in 2007, but my husband and I didn't get a divorce until 2009. So there was overlap.
Okay. Uh,
Mhm.
okay. Um, so in this new relationship, was it very serious? Did y'all get married? What was the next?
That was
Was
the relationship that transformed my life.
okay?
That was the relationship that almost took me out.
Then let's 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 open this can of worms. Because up to this point, I really enjoyed your story, and I really like. I'm like, but here's where sometimes, not sometimes, God will have a way of
Oh,
changing and shifting things when everything is on this rail. He says, "Oh, okay, let me take you and derail you real quick." So
and he did.
when you got remarried.
I did. Well, no, I
No.
did. So we started dating in 2007, and
Okay.
it became very serious by 2009, or was it 2008? We started dating in maybe the end of 2006, and in 2007, we made it official. So in 2008, he asked me, so let me say this, what you said about God derailing you. One of the things that I used to always see was when I would hear people do their testimonies, right? And so up until now, it's kind of sounded like my life was just kind of like, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, that's how it would sound. And so even though I was like this super confident, like light up the room socialite, when other people, as I'm growing up and meeting new kinds of people in Mississippi, people in all these, different schools, like I'm meeting people, I realized that everybody didn't grow up like me, right?
Right.
Sounds like I was kind of like in a little bubble, right? And
Yes.
so I'm starting to recognize that other people had different lives, and I'm respecting who they are based off and the life that they came from, right? And so one of the things that I would always hear testimonies, and the testimonies would always be that people overcame these like all these things, and I would be like, "Oh my God, like I don't have a testimony like that." Like when people hear my story, they're probably like, "Why don't you go sit down? You didn't have to struggle. You didn't have to do anything. Like you sound stupid, right?" And so I started to feel like I needed to be quiet in rooms because I didn't want people to be like, "Girl, go sit down. You ain't been through nothing," right? And so I would start to kind of be quiet about my upbringing because I felt like other people didn't understand. It wasn't like the average upbringing, right?
Uh-huh.
And so when I got into the relationship with this person, is I realized that I was in a different place because I had lost my spa right before I met him. So my spa, remember my dream was to open a spa and have spas all over the world. So when I opened the first one, that was the first one. And it was doing so well. We were busting out of the seams. And it was like, okay, these people came to me. I got these investors and they were going to help me open up the second one. Well, my second salon was going to be, you know how J.C. Penney is an anchor store at a mall. I
Yeah.
was going to be taking over half of a J.C. Penney. So you know how big my spa was. It was going to be almost 30,000 square feet.
Wow.
It was going to be the dream. Like we were going to have an elevator, like all the blueprints were done. Like it was on its way. And these investors turned out to be crooks. And I lost everything that I had. They even had my condo, my little Mercedes truck, everything in the deal. And I lost everything. And when I lost everything, I had to move back in with my mom. I had to get me and my son and move back in with my mom. And I felt like the biggest failure. like the biggest failure. Like I've accomplished all this stuff and I get here and I fall for something like this and lose everything. And it was a time when I like really had to be like, you know what? Get back up. Get back up and you can make it happen still. So that's when I went to work for Mac and I became a trainer for them. And so I was training for them. I was like, I can just start over. I can just start over. But the problem is when you've been an entrepreneur and you go back to working for somebody else, especially when you work in high level management positions where you're getting paid kind of a decent little salary, you don't get time to yourself to then work on your thing, right? It's all about their business and you're too tired to really ever work on yours. And so now I'm back in the working world and I meet this person and I had made a list of everything that I wanted and everything that I didn't want. Cause I think I saw it on Oprah. I think Oprah had done a thing where she was like talking about like all the things, you know. So, oh, and I forgot to tell you, this is something that now that I'm older, I'm recognizing when my mom was married to my stepfather, I think I was 9. I went through mindset training. I think I told you about that. It's like now it's called, it was called S training back then. Now it's called the forum. And if anybody ever wants to look up the forum, it's a mindset training. It teaches you how to think differently. It teaches you how to focus your mind on the things that you desire and make them come to fruition. So now, remember, I learned this at 9. I never knew why I was really different and why I thought differently from other people. But remember, I was the one who was always like, we can do it. And stuff
Right.
would always work. Everything I said I was going to do, I've done everything. Right. So to me, this is normal. I now know that it's my mindset, which is why I became a transformation coach. I help people with their relationships today, but really I'm a mindset coach. I teach people how to transform their lives through their thinking. They
Uh-huh.
have to change their mind. So that's where it all came from. So now I'm dating this person and I'm realizing that this person is lining up. I wanted a God-fearing man. I wanted a man to pray with me. I wanted a man who loved God. Like I wanted all of these things. And that's what I got, right? And I couldn't believe it. The only thing was, and I always tell people you have to be very specific. I wasn't specific about how he should look because I thought that that was being shallow. And everybody was like, oh, maybe you need to change, not be so what I try to tell women today is you have to still be honest with yourself about the list, right?
Sure.
Even though, and I say today, God knows you. He made you. He's in you. He knows you. So just be honest and say exactly what it is you want, exactly what it is you need. And so everybody was like, you need to be different. And so that's why I tell people be careful with picking somebody who is completely different, completely opposite from what you thought you had, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes that still isn't the fit. And so he was short. I said I would never date a short guy. He was shorter than me. Well, I guess we were the same height, but when I wore my heels, I was tall. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be a supermodel when I'm with him. It's like, right? So he was shorter than me and he was not an attractive man. And I must say this, and people laugh at me every time. He was not an attractive man. And so to me, I was attracted to the fact that we prayed together, the fact that we went to church together, the fact that he got behind me and my businesses and was like, whatever I needed, like he was that guy, right? He was an omega. He was really deep into his fraternity and community service. He was he was an accountant. He was a great father. He had been married, but he was divorced. But when I say great dad, like he was a great dad. Like I was really impressed with the type of father that he was to his children, even though he was divorced and he made sure that everything was about the children. Um, it was like all of these things, right? So, was he someone that I would have dated had I not been in the place of, remember, I had fallen. I know for a fact if I had still been the girl with the spa with the condo downtown and the little Mercedes truck, probably never would have talked to him. Never would have even met him.
Wouldn't even
Right?
looked at him.
Wouldn't have even looked at him.
Right.
But me trying to think that I was humbling myself, which is why
Mm.
you have to be careful. I thought that maybe I was on my high horse. Maybe I needed to be humbled. Maybe I needed to do things differently. And so I chose something different. So, wow, where are we? You want to know how we ended up, why I call him my kind of husband is because if I can go faster. So now I'm working for these companies, right? I have this company. I'm now working for Benefit Cosmetics, one of the top cosmetic companies out there for women. I'm their East Coast trainer. They call me into the office after the Christmas celebration and they give me 48 hours to make a decision to move to California. They said they needed me on the West Coast. Now, if I did not move to California, they would allow me to demote down to a regular manager. They were going to allow me to keep my salary, but I would have had to move to North Carolina and I could do the demotion, or I could move to California and continue to be a trainer for the company on the West Coast. That was a tough decision, right? Do I want to be demoted and live in North Carolina? Now, I know North Carolina is the bomb. Like, I lived in Atlanta. I know a lot of my friends graduated and moved to North Carolina. North Carolina was like an up and coming city. But I'm looking at my life. I'm looking at my vision. Remember, I still want to be this big mogul, right? I still want to be somewhere that's valued, where I would be the most valuable. So if I had
Mhm.
to choose between the most valuable money in North Carolina and California, I'm gonna go with Cali, right? And they gave me more money to move to California. So now I'm past six figures, right? I'm in the mids. So I'm
Uh-huh.
doing good, right? So the problem is I would fly out every Monday and have to be and not come back till Friday. And my son was only 10. So my mother picked up and moved to California with me so she could help me with my son. So now I'm in California. Oh my goodness, I forgot 2008. You're going to have to edit this. So in 2008, after I started dating him in 2007, in 2008, he asked me to move to Detroit with him. So he was like, move to Detroit because he was an accountant. And so his cousin owned like franchises, like I think 5 Papa John's in Detroit. And so he was like, if you move back home, you can be the accountant for all my stores. And I was like, I never wanted to live in Detroit. I was like, but maybe we could do it for a short time, buy some property, and then maybe do something different. So we moved to Detroit. But my mother came with us when we moved to Detroit because my mom's family is actually originally from Detroit. My cousin owns the largest funeral home in Detroit, Swanson's Funeral Home. And so my mother was like, okay, well, if you all are going to move to Detroit, I'll move to Detroit and I'll be closer to my family. And, we'll just settle there for a little while. So we all moved to Detroit. And this is where I found out that my man, who I thought lined up to all these things on the list, was a serial cheater.
Yeah.
I found out about 6 months after I moved to Detroit. And from that moment, I prayed to God every single day to get me out of here. And literally, I moved out of there the day, a year later to the day I moved there, and we moved to Atlanta. I said, I'm leaving him. He's a cheater. I shouldn't have to be in this relationship. But not only was he a cheater, he was verbally abusive. So I didn't know what verbal abuse was. I had never been cussed at as a kid. Like, that wasn't my world, right? So I just thought that that's how he was because he used to always say he's just a nigger from Detroit, right? He would always make like that little comment. So then when he would act crazy and I would be like, you a nigger from Detroit, then he would get mad at me and say, I'm putting him down. I say, you said you were the nigger from
Right.
Detroit, right?
Right.
So when I started to see that mentality was coming out, I started to get to understand more about him deeply, how he can where his background and how his mom was
The underlying trauma stuff.
oh my gosh. He had
Yeah.
yes. When I started to learn all that, then it all started to make sense. But I had to learn how to fight for myself because I would just be quiet when he would curse. So I had to learn how to curse back. And so I did, right? I had to learn how to defend myself. And I was like, this isn't me. I feel like I'm somebody else. And I used to be looking in the mirror, literally like, what have I got myself into? So I prayed every single day. And God was like, you're moving, right? So I moved to Atlanta thinking that I was going to be good. He even moved me to Atlanta. I even left all of the furniture and everything in that house. I was like, you can have it all. I'm starting over and I'm moving to Atlanta. Now I've moved to Atlanta. Remember, I'm still traveling, flying out every Monday, coming home every Friday. And so he's begging me back, begging me back, begging me back. My husband and I get our official divorce. And so when my husband and I got the official divorce, he asked me to marry him with the ring, right? And he said that he knew what he had lost and all of this stuff and that he would be different. And so he asked me to marry him. So now we're engaged. And so I'm flying, flying, flying. And so he would always pray with me when I would take off. Before I would fly, we would pray. And when I would land, he would usually be the first person that I would call because sometimes he would stay on the phone with me because I'm a woman, right? Traveling all over this country by myself with 100-pound bag full of makeup and then my regular bag with my stuff in it. And so sometimes he would talk me all the way to like whatever my hotel was going to be. But if I was traveling with some of the other team, I would not call him until I got to my hotel. So now we're apart. He's still in our house in Detroit and I live in Atlanta. We're now engaged, but he's saying that he wants to be in Atlanta with me. He's an accountant for the Detroit Public School District. And so he has his own whole job, right? And so one day I land and I pick up the phone to call him. You know how everybody jumps up as soon as the plane lands. Well, I'm in the window. I fly all the time. I'm just going to wait and let everybody shuffle around. So I dial his number and a woman picks up and she says, she was like, Sydney Kelliee. She was like, I've been waiting for you to call.
Wow.
I look at the phone and I'm like, thinking I have the wrong number. And so that's when she said, I've been waiting for you to call. And so she said, and I'm like, who is this? And she was like, he's not here. He told me to tell you when you call. And I just hung up, right? I'm like, I can't deal with this right now. I'm getting off the plane, literally. So now my mind is going crazy. I'm like, what is happening? I'm like trying to get my bags, calling his sister, like, what is going on? Like some woman is answering his phone. And every time I call, she keeps answering the phone. So that means he's nowhere near the phone, right? I get to my hotel and then we have a big training. They're going to be like 400 women and I'm in who I'm training. And so I get to my hotel, I'm crying like, what is going on? I find out that he got into an argument with some woman who he had let live in our house. Now we're engaged, right? We're engaged. So the woman is living in our house. She said that they were a couple. It turns out that I guess he was allowing her to be a couple without my knowledge. But he kept telling her, I'm engaged. You knew I was engaged. You knew I was moving to California. Like you knew that we weren't going to be a couple. They got into a big argument. She tried to run over him like in the driveway with the car. She tried to like ram him. He picked up a stick. He hit the car. And when he came down on the car, the windshield cracked. They considered that domestic violence and they hauled him off to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my fiance is in jail because he got into an argument with his girlfriend that I didn't know about. How does that work?
Right. You locked up on your girlfriend while your fiance's in another state.
How
Yeah.
does that work? And so he has his dad call me. He gets in touch, big old thing. Long story short, because it's crazy, Maurice. And this is what we need to get to about the transformation and how women just stay for craziness for too long. So he gets out of there. And what do? I make sure when he gets out that he has a cell phone, that he has somebody to pick him up, like all of this stuff. And I said, this is finally your penis got you into trouble, right? And I had been telling him that being a cheater was nothing cool and that eventually it was going to get him into trouble. But he had said that he would never do it again. And I believe that he valued our relationship and me enough to really risk, not want to risk losing it and would never do that again. So when now this happens, I'm like separating myself. Now, this could be the part where I think that maybe I had to be a little crazy because I really did separate myself from the relationship, the fiance, and the friend. It was like I was almost felt like I was talking to him as a friend, like, this is what you did wrong, this is what you shouldn't have done. But then I would have these bouts of, F you, I can't believe I'm even talking to you. So it was like I was going crazy, right?
Uh-huh.
So he gets out. He's like, um, his parole, is it parole officer that you have when you're in trouble?
Yeah.
That you have to answer to? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he had one of those. And he would always say he's a good guy that got caught up in a bad situation. He had never been to jail before in his life, right? Maybe got arrested for acting crazy at a Q party in college, but never been to jail, especially not for domestic violence. That's like real. That's like a real thing, right?
Sure.
So so and it's like a felony too. So now he has all of this going on at this big age, all because he can't control himself, right? So now he's like, the guy keeps telling me that every time he goes before the judge, he's like, well, my family is in California and he's trying to get switched to California to let them do his little parole time or whatever in California, or be on a house arrest or whatever in California. So finally, his parole officer was like, it would be different if he was married. The judge would look at it differently if he was married.
Uh,
Why did they say that?
uh,
So he was like, we should get married. And then that way I could come there and then we could just start all over. So what did I do? I went to Las Vegas and I got married to him at the drive through in Las Vegas. And I said, you better not ever tell anybody that we're married. I am doing this only because you need me to. This is never the way that I should be married. And I am not accepting this as a marriage. This is simply for the paperwork. Nobody can ever know that we're officially married. And I wore that ring because remember, we were engaged, but that
uh-huh.
didn't mean that we were married. And so we turned the paperwork in to them. They let him transfer to California. He moves to California. We start this great life. He becomes the NAACP president here in California over 5 major cities. We're like growing like this whole organization. And we're like members of the marriage ministry at church. Now here's the biggest lie of all. Everybody just assumed we were married. They didn't ask. They just saw my ring and assumed we were married. I never said we were married. So that's
Well,
how.
the ring kind of spells that out, but I get it.
So some people I would say were engaged. And if you looked at our Facebook page, my Facebook page said engaged. But of course, everybody was like, we were married. And so we were part of the marriage ministry at church. We had all these friends. We were like involved in our church. It was such, things were going great. And then one day our pastor called us in because he said, I want to know why your Facebook page says that you're still engaged if you're married. And so we had to be honest and tell him, now here's the kicker. Remember I said he was a great dad and he had been divorced? He was never divorced.
Oh, wow.
Not legally. So
Wow.
technically we couldn't have gotten married, right? Because you're
Right.
already married, idiot. So then the pastor called us on that. He sat him down. He told him that he had this amount of time to get himself together, blah, blah, blah. So he eventually gets the divorce. Now we're still together. But all the while, we have this terrible relationship, Maurice. It's like he's a totally different person outside than he is inside. He's verbally abusive. He cusses. He throws things. He's always accusing me of, you're going to leave me anyway. As soon as everything falls into place that you want it to be, you're going to, it was literally out of a 7-day week. I probably cried 5 days a week. I was always crying. And I always had to hide and cry because my mother lived in our casita and my son was in the house. I didn't want them to see me crying. So I would cry in the closet. I would hide in the closet and cry. Then I would pull myself together and I would go back to wherever the rest of the family was. Same thing I had to do at my job. Remember, I was a trainer. I was always on stage training makeup artists on how to be better. There would literally be times when I would be arguing with him on the phone in the bathroom before my training. I would have to clear my face, straighten myself up, and go
And go
back out there
perform.
and do what I had to do.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible life to live. It was a fight constantly in my head. I was always sad. I was always crying. And I didn't know what anxiety was, but I was having small anxiety attacks. I would always think that I was having a heart attack and I would have to be rushed to the hospital. Like they know me at the emergency room here by first name. They're like, hey, what's up, Sydney Kelliee? Like they know me because I, if I even think my thumb is tingling, I'm going to the emergency room. So I would always think that I was having a heart attack. And here's the thing. He would fight with me and argue with me. And then when I thought I was getting ready to have this, I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack, my blood pressure. He would be like, come on, babe, let's go for a walk. And he would hold my hand and walk with me until I was calm again. That's crazy. But I didn't know that then. So one of the things that I learned is that I started doing research on why it felt like this. I wasn't able to just pull away. And I learned about narcissism and manipulation and all these things. And I didn't understand how I could fall for something like that. But remember, I told you that my mom and I are super close, and it's always been about me. And what I didn't realize is even though I love her, she's still my best friend, and we're still like connected, like at the hip to this day. My mom is a narcissist. My mom has
Mhm.
always controlled me, but I didn't
Uh,
know that it was control because it was what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to be in dance class. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. So it seemed like it was what I wanted to do because she wanted to do it too. But if I had been the type of daughter that was like, I don't want to do that, I probably would have seen a different side of my mom. Because do you remember? College wasn't it like you don't there's no option. This is what you're
right.
doing, right?
Right.
And so I realized that that was a characteristic that was normal to me that I probably didn't realize because it didn't play out the same. My mom never cursed at me. My mom was never mean to me, but it was still the control of what's best for me, right? And so he took very good care of me, but then he was also the same person who abused me, right? So
Mhm.
he would make sure that things were prepared for me. Like he cooked, he did all that kind of stuff. Like I didn't have to do any of that kind of stuff. It was like he took care of me, but then he was the same one who was damaging me, right? So our relationship went on for forever. Us arguing, me crying, me trying to reach out to people in our church and people being like, oh, that's just how young marriages are. And, like blowing everything off. And it finally came to the place where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I am looking in the mirror with tears literally rolling down my eyes. And I'm like, I don't even know who I am. But then when I go to church, I'm this whole person. And I realized that it was the cover up that I couldn't do anymore. Now, the
Right.
one thing that I knew that he knew is that I never wanted to be embarrassed. I never wanted to be embarrassed. And I think that he thought that he could continue to treat me like that because I was never going to say anything. That meant that I would have been walking away from my big, beautiful home in California, from this first lady of the NAACP, from all of these things, right? But remember, I've always been the girl who had everything, who lost it and will start over. And that's exactly who I was at 45 years old. I said, I'm not doing this anymore, even if I have to go homeless. And that's what I did. I packed up and I moved out. I moved my mom, my son, and my two dogs into my girlfriend's house, and I lived there for a year. And I rebuilt myself literally from the ground up. I'm 45 years old. I'm homeless. I'm the spoiled girl who's had everything. And now look at me. Like, I really have nothing because I was bossed up, but broken. And in order for me to be repaired, I had to go underground. That's what I consider it,
For
right?
sure.
And so I researched, like, and I kept saying, God, show me what I need to do. Heal me and heal me quickly. Take me, show me what I need to do. But everything that I was trying to do, my business wasn't going well because I was always up and down. Everything that I was trying to do just was not working. And I kept saying, why? Well, remember, we're still going to church together. We still have a lot of friends together. And it was very difficult to be like, I'm separated because everybody was like, oh, we're praying for you guys to be back together. I'm praying for God to separate me, and you're praying for God to bring us back together. That doesn't work, right?
Right.
So I'm going through all of this. And so he says to me one day, the reason why things aren't working for you is because God wants us to be together and you keep trying to break us up. And I was like, is that why nothing is working? So now I'm weak again. And I'm thinking it's been a whole year. Everything that I've tried to do, it seems like, and back in the day, like if I touched it, it turned to gold. Now, and I say in my book, now I can barely even strike copper. Like I cannot, nothing is working. God, why aren't you letting anything work? Why aren't you giving me the money that I need so that I can move on, like, and do what I need to do? And it just wasn't working. And so that's when he was like, if you come back, we'll get this house and then we'll start all over. And so I said, I'm going to do it one last time. Maybe this is
Mm,
maybe this is the time. Maybe he realizes now how valuable, how
mm,
valuable everything is that we've built and that he will be different. And so I moved back in. The house that we bought wasn't ready yet. It was going to be like 30 days. So we moved into a temporary house until we could move into our house. And so we're living in the temporary house. We get into a couple of arguments, and I'm thinking to myself, God, I don't know if this is right. Please show me any sign before I move into this house. And a week before we were supposed to move into the house, I got a message on on Facebook. And she said, I know you don't know me, but I've been dating him for a year. And I was like, a year? Now, why are you begging me to come back, buying a
mm.
whole house, saying that you go, if you, like, this was your chance to be free, buddy, and you wouldn't have ever had to lie again,
Right.
you know? And so I was like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. Like, this is the sign. And I told him, go move into that house. I'm staying here and I'll figure it out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what God is going to do, but I'll figure it out. And I let him leave. And a week after he was gone, the girl sent me a picture of him naked in the mirror of the new house, butt naked in the mirror of the new house as proof that she was with him. And of course, it followed with a whole bunch of text messages and everything else. He stalked me for almost 5 months after I said it's an official done deal. But I knew this time that I was never going back. And I knew that it hurt so bad, but I knew that God had to show me, like he had to, like, I don't even know how to explain how God had to drop it in my, like, so that there was never a chance, Sydney
For sure.
Kelliee, you can't ever go back to this again. And
Right.
so I kept saying that God is not the author of confusion. And this has been confusion for over 10 years. I did this for 10 years. I knew 5 years in that I needed to be out. And I stayed an additional 5 years listening to the sisters of my church and my friends and other married couples saying, hang in there. This is just what happens in marriages. And it made me so sad because I I'm a Christian and I believe in marriage, but I believe that people get bullied into staying in marriages that are no good for them.
For sure.
And I see it
Absolutely.
happen to women all the time. But more than that, I see it happen to women who are at this age, who don't want to start over, who don't want to walk away from the big house, who don't want to walk away from the social status that they think they have, because it is embarrassing to start over. It is embarrassing. And so um, I asked God to heal me and heal me quickly. And I immediately went on a journey to figuring out who I needed to be to get back to the woman with the vision that I have been on since I was a little girl. And that's how I became technically a coach that talked more about relationships, because I started out as a business coach. And we skipped so much, but I never said that when my company moved me to California, a year and a half after moving me here, they fired all of us. The whole training team got restructured and all of us lost our jobs. And so now I'm in California with my mother and my son and two dogs with no job.
Uh,
And so I literally had to start. I started coaching as a business coach to teach women in the beauty industry how to get their businesses up and running on the internet, how to start Facebook, how to market, because I never said, but my official degree in college is marketing. So I paired my marketing degree with my beauty cosmetology license, and that's how I kind of lived in the marketing world in the beauty industry. And so um having to just keep starting over like that again, it's always been about don't stop. It's always been about the dream, like the vision that God gave me as a little girl, which has played out in so many different areas. And even when I fail, I think I said to myself, this is the testimony. Because remember, I kept saying, God,
right. You want a
oh, I
testimony.
don't have a testimony.
Yeah.
And he was like, this is your testimony. And you're going to make sure that you reach women like you, that you show women that it's okay to start over. And you show them that whatever it was that kind of put a pause on their dream or put a pause on whatever it was, they can still do it in this second half of life. And that's how I started talking, because as a business coach, I started realizing that a lot of my clients were like always had an issue. It was always something with their husband or something with the family. It was always something. And I started realizing that when your heart space isn't right, nothing else works.
That is.
Nothing, which is why I couldn't get my business to flourish when I was like anxious and trying to get away from him. It was like God kept saying to me, I want to I want to level you up. I want to take you to the next level, but he can't go and you can't go the way that you are. We've
Mm.
got to break you away from that so that I can then take you and put you where I need you to be. So I feel like he puts our life on pause, because a lot of women are like, you know, they keep going, and you think your life is good, but you know that you have all this stuff underneath, right? And so it's like, in order for God to elevate you, to graduate you to that next level, there's some stuff that has to break off. And so he can't make you, he can show you, and he'll hold on to you. He'll wrap us in his wings of protection, but he's not going to elevate us until we're ready to move. So he puts our life on pause until you decide that you're ready to go with him, to follow him, to listen to him. And then that's when he takes you and brings you to the next level. So it was difficult. I had to learn a lot, and to learn it at such a, I often used to say, why did I go through this in my 20s? Like it would have been so much better. But I think God needed me, because remember, embarrassment was one of my things. I don't want to be embarrassed. And he showed me that you don't have to be embarrassed. I walked high through that whole breakup with confidence. And it might have been a fake confidence at first, Because a lot of times I would like go to church and I would smile and I would act like, oh, I'm strong and I have it all together. And I would get in the car and I would just break down. But those are the things that I had to go through to be strengthened so that I then could show other women. And I promise you, every woman that I have walked through a process like this, I say to them, you're not going to understand the process until you walk away. Everybody wants to hold on, but you have to walk away in order to really get the transformation that God has for you. And so I chose women over 45 because I know that there's a window between 40 and 45 where women begin to have this awakening. It starts at 40 and they start to say, what am I doing with my life? If their relationship isn't good, that's when they start to evaluate it. If their career isn't right, that's when they start to evaluate it.
Right.
You're going into that second half. By 45, you're usually ready to make a change. And so that's who I decided that I wanted to work with, women who were at that point where they may be a little stuck and they just need somebody to help them bridge over so that they can actually be healthy, whole, right? And that they can actually attract the things that the new woman, because see, when we go through these transformations, we become a whole new woman.
For
But now
sure.
you got to learn who you are. And I think a lot of women don't take the time out to learn who the new woman is. We knew who the old Sydney Kelliee was. She was,
Wildly, but it's okay.
she was this, right? And I always say I was hot then, but now I'm seasoned, right? And I'm even spicier now that I know who I am at this big age and after everything that I've been through, and me having to look back and see the journey and the evolution and who I had to become. And now I love her completely differently than I loved the Sydney 20 years ago or the Sydney who went through that crazy relationship. So to this day, I am not officially married to husband number two because even though I went through that drive through and said I do, we sent those papers to his people so that he could be okay. But I packed those papers up and stuffed them under the drawer. I never sent them to the state to be official. And then in the end, we found out that he wasn't divorced anyway, so the marriage could never work. It was never a marriage. So that's why I say a fake marriage.
So the funny thing is that you went through all that for God. I mean, like God processed you through all that, and it allows you to see differently. It gave you a different lens. It gave you a different perspective. It
Mm,
allowed you to be the woman that you currently are right now, that's doing the things that you are currently doing.
yeah.
And it's called battle tested. Because
Wow.
if you have never been through anything, there's nothing that you can say to anybody if you ain't got no kinks in your armor. If your armor is still shiny, you just took the plastic off of it, and you ain't got no battle scars, there's nothing that you're going to be able to say to the people whose life that you experienced later in life, they experienced early on in life, so they got battle scars early on.
Yes.
So I totally appreciate your rawness and your realness and being able to open up and share your story. I do have a question,
Yes.
and this is an introspective question.
Hmm.
What is something that you didn't learn growing up that you had to learn the hard way, or something you didn't learn when you were younger that you had to learn the hard way?
I'm going to say how to look at my finances, how to look at money, because it was never an issue. It was never I had to think about the budget or I had to look at the budget. Like it was never like that. And so when I honestly, it was when I went because he was an accountant, remember? So he was good at that part of our relationship. So I kind of let him handle a lot of that stuff. And one of the things that I realized was one of the things in our relationship that I know women deal with today is letting a man be a man, right? And remember in my first marriage, I said that I would ask my husband, but if he said no, I would do it anyway. And I knew that that wasn't right. So in this relationship, I tried to be different. I tried to let him like really truly be the man and handle everything, but he wasn't always responsible. And that goes
Mm.
back to that whole letting a man lead, right? And you can let somebody lead, but where are they leading you to? Or will they lead you into a brick wall, right? And so I never wanted to shake the fence or cause any ruckus by questioning him in some of the things that he did, because I didn't want it to seem like I wasn't trusting him and letting him be the man, right? And so there were times when things would come into play, like one of our houses that we lived in, I guess we were behind on the mortgage. So he was an entrepreneur too. And so both of us being an entrepreneur and having our own businesses, money was not steady, right?
For
So we
sure.
would get big spurts of money. He would do jobs for companies and he might get like a $20,000 check. But if we haven't paid our bills for 4 months, then when you get the $20,000 check, it's like it's almost gone, right?
Right.
So, but he would keep stuff like that from me because he didn't want me to be anxious or worried. And so it's not until it's too late, then you're saying, babe, this is where we are. Where if you had said that 6 months ago or 4 months ago or even 3 months ago, maybe I could have jumped in and done something, but I didn't want to ruffle the feathers. So I walked on eggshells like, okay, he got it. Okay, he got it. So one of the things that I had to learn is because I never really had to fully be responsible for everything myself. Remember, I've always been in a
Right.
relationship. I went from being spoiled in my house to going to a husband, right? So I had to learn that late. I had to learn how to navigate all of those things later in life. And it seems weird to some people because it's like I always had everything together, but I always had people helping me have everything together. Now I'm on my own for real, for real. And it's not really on my own because I'm always going to have my mom with me, but I'm on my own. No husband this time, homeless, got to get out of it, got to figure it out. Right. And
Right.
so that was scary. And I kind of wish that I had gone through that younger, but I think me going through it older gives me even more. Sometimes I think it makes me more tough on the women that I coach because I'm like, look, if I could do this, you can do this, right?
Right.
But I know that everybody is different. And so I think that's one of the things that I had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet by myself at 45 years old.
Wow. It- and, in grand scheme of things, 45 is really not old, but when we're putting it in perspective, I look at my parents and I'm like, when I see them in their 40s or my dad in his 40s, um, when I see them in their 40s, they looked old. They
Yeah,
just,
they looked older than us
like, but to have to go and start over on a clean slate and
with
with
nothing.
nothing at 45, yeah, that is definitely a
And
challenge.
I
So,
had no car, and my girlfriend gave me her 1999 Mitsubishi Montero truck. So I'm 2017 driving a 99 Mitsubishi. Baby, I held my head up high. I said, God, if this
oh,
is what I got to
hey,
do to start over, this is what I got to do.
pay for and it accept gas and it
Right?
had four tires and it got you to where you wanted to be. That's a win in my book. It is. I'll take wheels over no wheels any day.
But it was such a humbling experience for me because the old Sydney would have been embarrassed. The old Sydney wouldn't have wanted to show up in that 99 Mitsubishi Montero. And the new Sydney was like, I don't care because I'm about to rise up from this whole thing. And this is going to only be a conversation later. And that's what I did.
Well, that is all right. So right now you're currently doing what?
Currently, I'm the Over 45 Tribe founder. I have a community of women and I'm a coach. I did write my book, How to Boss Up After Breakup, 7 Ways to Boss Up After Breakup. And then I did a book after that, which is more like a journal, and it's called Finding Your Inner Boss. And that journal takes women through prompts and lessons and all these different things so that they can dig deep to figure out who they are today. Like, not who you were yesterday, not who you were last week, but who you are today and where you want to go and what you need to do to get there. Um, I'm also part of the transformation team. We're a team of 5 coaches, and we coach people like us, you and me, over 45. Some people, I think some of the other coaches go down to 30 and up. But basically, this second half of life is like the, I'm so passionate about it. I really want to see people win this second half. And so it seems like everything that I do, everything that is, it's all about empowering women to be better in their second half and go after.
Can go find her right here. Get you. Let me tell y'all, coaching and having a therapist and all that stuff is much needed. If somebody is somewhere where you want to be, how else do you get to where they are?
Yeah.
Why not go to the coach? Why not go to the person that's standing in the space that you want to be in and ask that person to walk with you so that you can be standing in the space that they're
Totally.
in? So go get her coaching sessions, buy her books, follow her on TikTok.
Yes.
Do she throws an event in your area, pull up to the event
Pull up.
and everything. So, do you have anything else you want to say to the people before we get up out of here?
I know that it sounds like it's a lot. And to what you just said about coaching, I know a lot of people are kind of like new to this whole coaching industry. And what I just want people to know is that a coach is just like a fitness coach. A life coach or a relationship coach is just like a fitness coach. The goal is to get you to where you want to be. I had to have a coach, even going through this. I had a spiritual coach. I had to get a financial coach. I had to get a mindset coach for myself in order to make it through the whole thing. And that's what made me decide that I wanted to be a coach myself. I want to hold the hand of someone who has gone through something that I've gone through and walk them, like I said, over to the other side. Coaching and therapy is something that I think people need to recognize is not something that's a bad thing. It's like a good thing to have somebody holding your hand. Why keep bumping your head when somebody can say, look, go this way, and you'll make it without having to go all the way around? If somebody would have told me, well, I don't know, because that's part of the problem, right? If somebody would have, but at a point, if somebody would have helped me see that I didn't have to stay or I didn't have to, because a lot of people will say, well, how could you have been so confident and that happened to you? And I will say that at the point at which I fell, when I lost everything, and I had to go back out there, I wasn't as confident. I was vibrating at a low level when I met that man. And so I accepted things that I normally would not have accepted. And so when you're vibrating low, you have to make sure that you have boundaries and all these things, because otherwise things will come into your life that you don't necessarily want. So, oh, if I could just say anything, I just want women to know that the second half is the best half. It's not over. And if there's something in your life that you don't like right now, if it's your body, if it's the way that you think, if it's anything, you can change it. You can change it, and you have the power to change it. And we can do it together. And I want to help women do that one woman at a time. One woman. If I can only say one,
One. That's all. All
all
you
I,
need is one.
just
That's
one,
if you can get one, you done did you done did your job.
I did my job.
I'm telling you, y'all need to really tap into what she's doing. Especially that 45 and older crew. There's a ton of coaches out here that are dealing with the younger crowd, and they're catering their information for a younger audience. If you're 45 and older, you've already walked through a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
that these young people have walked through. And so to have somebody who is saying it's okay to be 45 and hit the reset button. It's okay to be
Ooh,
50 and hit the reset button.
yeah,
It's okay. And I'm here to help you and support you and walk with you and be a guide to you,
yeah,
and then have you infused in a community of other people that's doing the same thing at your age. Y'all
yeah.
need to tap into what she's doing 100%. And I'm telling you,
I
you
want
will
to add
not
something.
regret it at all.
At all. At all.
You,
I want to add something. One of the things that I say every morning, I guess it's like an affirmation, and I speak it out loud, is I say, God, send me who you want me to touch and who you want to touch me. And so I just want to say thank you to you, C. Maurice Ball, for coming into my world. I think at this big age, another thing that I want to say is that I think a lot of people think that their friendships that they already have are the friendships that they're going to go into their next season with. And I just want people to know that there's still room for new people to come into your life in this second season that are who God needs to connect you
mm,
to so that we can all move to the next level. And I just want to say that there was a reason that we were met the way that we were met, and that is
for
for a
sure.
reason. And I'm grateful for you and I'm thankful for you. And I'm excited to see what we can do to make things different.
I agree with you, and I'm grateful and thankful for you. Hey, you've been chilling with Maurice Ball on the C. Maurice Ball Show, and Miss Sydney Kelliee. We love you like a play cousin, and I'm out. Peace.
Peace.